My name is Lila Carter, and if you're reading this, chances are you've already heard some version of my story. You know the one. How I was fired by my boss's son-in-law for outshining him on a $380 million contract, only to accidentally trigger a $5.5 billion market crash less than 24 hours later. It sounds like the kind of exaggerated headline that would go viral online, doesn't it? The thing is, it's true. Well, most of it anyway. But let me start from the beginning, because there's so much more to this than just what made the news. I've always been someone who believed in hard work paying off. Growing up in a small town where opportunities were scarce taught me early on that success isn't handed to you. It's earned through grit and determination. That belief carried me all the way to Crestwood Global, one of the largest financial firms in the country. I worked my way up from an entry-level analyst position to become one of their top deal closers. My job wasn't glamorous. It involved long hours staring at spreadsheets, endless meetings with clients, and late-night strategy sessions, but I loved it. Every win felt personal. Every client relationship built with care. For years, I thought I had finally found my place in the world. But life has a funny way of reminding you how fragile everything can be. It started with a phone call at 6:45 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Not the kind of call anyone expects when they wake up groggy, still half asleep, thinking about coffee and whether they remembered to turn off the stove before bed. No, this was the kind of call that makes your stomach drop and your heart race even before you fully understand what's happening. "Lila," came the sharp voice on the other end. It was Richard Langston, the CEO of Crestwood Global himself. He rarely called employees directly unless something big was going down. "We need to talk. Now." Before I could respond, he hung up, leaving me sitting there in stunned silence. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. Whatever this was, it wasn't good. By the time I got dressed and drove to the office, an impressive glass skyscraper downtown, I could tell something was off. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy, people whispering to each other as they hurried past security checkpoints. Even the receptionist avoided meeting my eyes as she directed me toward Richard's private conference room. When I stepped inside, I immediately noticed two things. First, the tension hanging heavy in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Second, the presence of Marcus Hargrove, Richard's son-in-law and one of the firm's senior executives. Marcus was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking smug. His tailored suit screamed privilege, but his expression spoke volumes about his disdain for anyone he deemed beneath him, which, unfortunately for me, included pretty much everyone else in the company. We'd never gotten along, though I tried to keep things professional. He saw me as competition, someone who threatened his carefully curated image of superiority. And maybe he was right to feel threatened, because over the past few months, I'd been closing deals faster and bigger than anyone else on his team, including him. Richard sat at the head of the table, his face pale and drawn. He gestured for me to take a seat without saying a word. Then, after what felt like an eternity of awkward silence, he spoke. "Lila," he began, his voice strained. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just come out with it. Effective immediately, you're terminated." The words hit me like a freight train. Terminated? What? I stared at him, dumbfounded, trying to process what he'd just said. Fired? Me? After everything I'd done for this company? "What are you talking about?" I managed to stammer, my voice shaking. "I don't understand." Richard glanced uncomfortably at Marcus, who smirked triumphantly. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about performance or anything legitimate. It was personal. Marcus had orchestrated this somehow, using whatever leverage he had over Richard to get rid of me. "You left me no choice," Richard continued, avoiding eye contact. "Your recent actions have jeopardized the company's reputation. We can't afford distractions like this." "My actions?" I repeated incredulously. What exactly did I do wrong? Instead of answering, Richard slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were printouts of emails and internal memos detailing my role in securing the $380 million contract last week, a deal that had been celebrated as a major victory for Crestwood Global, at least until now. "That deal should have gone to Marcus," Richard muttered under his breath, almost apologetically. "You didn't follow protocol." "Protocol? Protocol." I wanted to scream. There was no official protocol for landing such a massive account, It required quick thinking, adaptability, and sheer willpower. All qualities Marcus lacked, but ones I excelled at. Still, arguing wouldn't change anything. They'd already decided my fate. As I packed up my belongings later that day, anger simmered beneath the surface. How dare they throw me away like yesterday's trash after everything I'd contributed? But beneath the anger lay fear. What would happen next? Could I find another job in this industry after being publicly ousted like this? Would anyone even want to hire me, knowing Richard Langston had fired me? Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Later that evening, unable to sleep, I turned on the TV hoping for a distraction. Instead, I found myself staring at breaking news alerts flashing across the screen. Stock markets around the world were plummeting, triggered by rumors of instability within Crestwood Global. Analysts speculated wildly about potential scandals involving key leadership figures. Panic spread like wildfire, erasing billions in value within minutes. And then it hit me. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. My firing hadn't just been personal retaliation. It was a calculated move designed to shift blame onto me while protecting Marcus and Richard. By ousting me publicly, they'd created a scapegoat for any fallout related to the controversial deal. Except things had spiraled far beyond their control. By 6:45 a.m. the next morning, the damage was catastrophic. A $5.5 billion market crash linked directly back to Crestwood Global's sudden loss of credibility. Investors panicked, pulling out funds en masse. Competitors seized the opportunity to exploit the chaos. And amidst all the turmoil stood Crestwood Global, teetering on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, I sat alone in my apartment, watching the nightmare unfold in real time. A part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, newly unemployed and blamed for destroying one of the biggest companies in the country, all because I dared to succeed where others failed. But laughter quickly gave way to resolve. If they thought they could destroy me, they were dead wrong. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Over the following days, whispers spread throughout the financial community. Some praised my accomplishments, calling me a victim of corporate politics. Others vilified me, painting me as reckless and incompetent. Reporters camped outside my building, desperate for a statement. Friends stopped returning my calls, unsure whether associating with me might tarnish their own reputations. Isolation became my constant companion. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, I refused to disappear quietly into obscurity. Deep down, I knew I hadn't caused the crash, not intentionally anyway. Yes, my dismissal may have sparked initial doubts about Crestwood Global stability, but the underlying issues ran far deeper than one rogue employee. Corruption, greed, and mismanagement had festered unchecked for years, hidden behind polished facades and empty promises. Someone needed to expose the truth, and I realized that someone might as well be me. Armed with nothing but determination and a laptop, I began digging into Crestwood Global's operations. Late nights turned into early mornings as I combed through public records, leaked documents, and insider accounts. Each discovery painted a clearer picture of systemic fraud and deceit, implicating not only Marcus and Richard, but also several high-ranking board members. The scale of their crimes shocked even me, revealing a web of lies so intricate it seemed impossible to unravel. But unravel it I would. Along the way, allies emerged from unexpected places. Former colleagues reached out, sharing damning evidence they'd kept hidden for fear of retaliation. Whistleblowers contacted me anonymously, eager to contribute pieces of the puzzle. Even strangers offered support, inspired by my refusal to back down against overwhelming odds. Together, we formed a loose coalition united by a shared goal: justice. As the investigation progressed, tensions mounted. Threats arrived daily, cryptic messages warning me to stop before it was too late. One night, someone broke into my apartment, trashing the place and stealing critical files. Another time, I narrowly escaped being run off the road during my commute. Fear lingered constantly at the edges of my consciousness, threatening to consume me whole. Yet each attempt to intimidate me only strengthened my resolve. They could try to silence me, but they couldn't erase the truth. Months passed in a blur of clandestine meetings, encrypted communications, and painstaking research. Slowly but surely, the pieces fell into place. By the time winter rolled around, I had amassed enough evidence to bring down not just Crestwood Global, but an entire network of corrupt corporations operating in its shadow. All that remained was deciding how best to use it. Should I leak everything to the press, igniting a media firestorm that would expose the culprits once and for all? Or should I take a quieter approach, presenting my findings to regulatory agencies and letting them handle the fallout? Both options carried risks, but neither guaranteed closure. Revenge burned fiercely within me, demanding retribution for the injustices I'd endured. Yet, somewhere along the line, my motivations had shifted. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about holding powerful people accountable, no matter the cost. In the end, I chose a middle path. On a chilly December morning, I uploaded thousands of incriminating documents to a secure server accessible only to select journalists and government investigators. Simultaneously, I released a carefully crafted statement outlining the scope of the corruption and urging immediate action. Within hours, headlines exploded worldwide, naming names and demanding answers. Arrest warrants were issued. Careers crumbled overnight. Public outrage reached fever pitch. Through it all, I remained anonymous, watching events unfold from the sidelines. Justice, however imperfect, had been served. Crestwood Global collapsed under the weight of its own sins, taking Marcus, Richard, and countless others down with it. As for me, I walked away with nothing but scars and memories, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Because sometimes losing everything gives you the freedom to fight for what truly matters. The aftermath of my actions was both exhilarating and isolating. The world had seen the truth, and while justice seemed to prevail in some form, it didn't magically repair the damage done. Lives were upended. Not just mine or those of Crestwood Global's executives, but also innocent employees who lost their jobs when the company imploded. Families struggled to make ends meet. Investors faced financial ruin. It was a stark reminder that even righteous battles come with collateral damage. For weeks after the expose, I stayed off-grid, holing up in a rented cabin deep in the woods. No phone, no internet, just silence and solitude. I needed time to process everything. The anger, the fear, the guilt. Was this what victory felt like? Hollow and bittersweet? Part of me wanted to disappear forever, start over somewhere no one knew my name. But another part, a stronger, fiercer part, knew that running wouldn't solve anything. This fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was about setting an example, showing others that power could be challenged, corruption exposed, and accountability demanded. When I finally emerged from hiding, I found myself thrust into the spotlight once again. Journalists tracked me down, eager for interviews. Activists reached out, asking me to join their causes. Former colleagues sent messages of gratitude, sharing how my actions had inspired them to stand up against injustices in their own workplaces. For the first time since the chaos began, I felt a glimmer of hope. But there was still unfinished business. One evening, as I scrolled through emails on my newly reactivated laptop, I came across a message from someone unexpected, Richard Langston. His tone was desperate, pleading almost. He claimed he'd been manipulated by Marcus and the board, forced into decisions he regretted. He begged me to meet him, promising answers I couldn't ignore. I hesitated. Meeting Richard felt dangerous, foolish even. What if it was a trap? Yet curiosity got the better of me. If nothing else, I owed it to myself and to everyone affected by Crestwood's downfall to hear him out. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from prying eyes. Richard looked older than I remembered, his once imposing presence diminished by shame and exhaustion. He ordered coffee but barely touched it, fidgeting nervously as he spoke. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he confessed, his voice trembling. "Marcus," he played me. "He convinced me you were a threat, that firing you would protect the company. I should have known better." "Protect the company?" I echoed bitterly. "You destroyed it, and along the way, you ruined countless lives, including mine." Richard flinched, guilt etched across his face. "I know," he admitted, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. But there's something you need to understand, Lila. Marcus wasn't working alone. There are others, people above him, pulling strings we didn't even realize existed." His words sent chills down my spine. Others? Who else could possibly be involved? Before I could press further, Richard slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything I've gathered is on here," he said quietly. "Names, transactions, connections. It goes higher than Crestwood. It spans industries, governments, entire systems built on exploitation and greed. Be careful, Lila. These people don't play fair." With that, he stood and left, leaving me staring at the tiny device in stunned silence. My instincts screamed caution, but I knew I couldn't ignore what he'd given me. Whatever secrets lay hidden inside, they might hold the key to dismantling the larger machine that had enabled Crestwood's corruption. Over the next several months, I poured myself into deciphering the contents of the flash drive. What I discovered was staggering. A vast network of interconnected entities operating in the shadows, manipulating markets, silencing dissenters, and profiting off suffering. It wasn't just one bad actor or one toxic company. It was a system designed to serve the powerful at the expense of everyone else. This revelation changed everything. My fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Armed with new evidence, I partnered with investigative journalists, advocacy groups, and legal teams committed to exposing the truth. Together, we launched a global campaign aimed at holding these institutions accountable. Lawsuits were filed. Protests erupted. Governments launched investigations. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form in the foundation of unchecked power. Through it all, I remained vigilant, knowing full well the risks I faced. Threats persisted, more sinister than ever before, but I refused to back down. Every attempt to intimidate me only fueled my determination. I'd already lost so much, my career, my reputation, my sense of safety, but I'd gained something far greater: purpose. Years later, as I stood on stage accepting an award for whistleblower activism, I reflected on how far I'd come. The journey hadn't been easy, nor had it provided closure in the traditional sense. Some wounds never fully heal, but I'd learned to carry them differently, using my pain as fuel for change. Looking out at the audience, I saw faces filled with admiration and gratitude. Many had followed my story closely, drawing strength from my resilience. Others were survivors of similar injustices, finding solidarity in shared struggles. In that moment, I realized my legacy wasn't defined by the $5.5 billion market crash or the fall of Crestwood Global. It was defined by the ripple effect of courage and defiance I'd sparked. As I stepped away from the podium, applause ringing in my ears, I allowed myself a rare smile. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges yet unseen. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful. Because sometimes losing everything gives you the freedom to rebuild, not just your own life, but the world around you. And that, I decided, was worth fighting for.